What I thought I would do today is go through field math. So I didn't really intend to go through this a plugin at a time, but that's sort of the way that it's been working out. And since, unlike our basic math plugin, which just allows you to do plus, minus, add, subtract, multiply, and divide. This one will actually do like advanced algebra. So you can do up to 52 variables or merge fields and put them all in a advanced formula, including all the brackets and parentheses like you learned in high school. It will, again, unlike basic math, it will allow you to do all of those things on records other than the contact record. So you can access and data in and write to the company, affiliate, refer, invoice, order, payments, etc. You can also, we've got some functionality in there that I'm going to try to show you. I'm going to show you we have the ability to do counts, sums, min, max, count, sum, min, max. I'm missing something. But anyway, so those are the things I'm going to show you. I'm going to just give you some basic stuff. Christy, would love to hear your idea. If you want to unmute yourself. I would love to hear it, especially because I'm stalling for time, and that'll give Carlos a couple extra minutes.
Okay, can you hear me now?
I can.
Okay, cool. So one of the problems that I have, not with Aussie, but another of our clients, is getting really good reporting visibility on how their lead magnets are converting. So this client I'm thinking of has like 15 different lead magnets out there. And what I was thinking was you could run some numbers on particular lead sources, look at sets of people and add them all up, and come up with a ratio for that given lead magnet, maybe against sales for people with the tag from that lead magnet. But then how do you display a ratio on the dash? Well, you could make a custom field that's called like conversion ratios or something, and you can make a set of contacts, a contact for each lead type, and then all you'd have to do is do a save search on the dash with two columns, one with the name and the other with that conversion ratio field column, and then you could just have lead magnet 1, lead magnet 2 as the different contact names in that search, and then a conversion ratio for each, because you could do that any field to any field back into those conversion ratios against the contact record for that particular lead magnet. Does that make sense?
It makes total sense. Yep.
Yeah, so you could give someone a dashboard that gives them a lot more visibility, because a lot of these little guys that are coming up with APIs seem to want to make separate Infusionsoft dashboards that are outside of Infusionsoft, but to me, for a customer, it's just adding another thing that they have to think about. So how can you get that information onto the dashboard?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, there's two schools of thought on that. I was just at Infusionsoft the end of last week, and there's a big philosophical debate, right? One is like this idea of workarounds, which every time we do something like that where we're stuffing things into and we're doing plenty of them in Aussie's application, where you're using referral to be a a plan ID, or things like that. You can't argue, and I might even argue that those are workarounds, and they're kind of kludgy and ugly, and and more prone to break. They're not elegant. But on the other hand, the other argument is, hey, if it works and it's stable and isn't going to break, then like you said, you've got to go for usability over elegant. And so you're absolutely right. I mean, that when you first started talking, my first thought was that you could create something else, like either like a referral record, or put it at the company level, or or on because we have something called override too, which you haven't seen, but so literally I can I could like put your, let's just say it was your app and that your contact ID was 18555, okay? I could actually do that math and write the results of every single thing to 18555. So I could actually make on your record the 10 percentages, and then when I'm doing the calculations, even though they're calculating every purchase or every opt-in form, it's only writing them to you. So that would be the other way to do it, and then just display those fields off of your record. That's kind of what, that was where my brain went first, but
then
I'm not
use 10 more
sure.
fields.
You would use 10 more fields, exactly. That is true. Instead of just 2 fields. You know, now, of course, I use a lot less fields, though, because I don't have to use contact fields for everything. But yeah, I mean, so yeah, there's definitely more than one way to skin a cat, but that's, and because that's the exact same question I was running around in my brain about lifetime customer value, you know. And and normally that's done at the contact level, but I had these guys come to me and they wanted to be able to do it at the company level. And I was like, oh, well, where do I put those calculations? Because they're on every customer every time. And that's what I was saying. I was like, well, how about if I just put it in your record? And they were like, yeah, great, that'd work. So yeah.
The other thing I was thinking with that is if you had a set of contacts that were just particular performance indicators, you wouldn't even actually need to create custom fields. You just put it as like this in the spouse's name field or something, because all you need is just a text field.
That's right. That's absolutely right. We put things in like middle name and in places like that all the time. And yeah, that's exactly right. So that's kind of cool, huh?
Yeah. Have you? Well, because Tim Foster was like, what can I build? And I was coming back from the beach. And I'm like, oh, I really want this visibility for a client. And then I'm like, you know what? Kim Stuff's going to do it anyway. So I've got another question for you if you still want some time.
Yeah, sure.
Do you have any ideas on, and I know you could do this in Legacy, but on purchase, like the purchase conversion of a given email? So you have a customer with a really long nurture sequence, for example, like Aussie takes 6 months. But it'd be really interesting to know which email was opened last before a sale.
Mm-hmm.
Because, you know, that's going to tell you that email potentially's messaging converts a little better than the rest. Mm-hmm. And now I was catching up with Sherrod Martin when he was in Sydney a couple of weeks ago, and he said that was actually a standard report in Legacy, but it doesn't exist in Campaign Builder.
That's interesting. So, I mean, you wouldn't need a plugin to do that. We have a piece of code on the website. Hang on, let me see what Carlos is saying. But hang on. While you're in it, I'm not. Let me tell him I'm not in it. 1 second. Just tell him I'm stalling for time. I should tell him Jeopardy music is playing too. You guys don't know what that means. We have a game show here that has very distinct. Oh, okay, all right, never mind. Okay, so we have on our website. Let me see if I can find it. Let me see if it was on the old one. And I'm not sure if I moved it over, but I have a code sample of how you can trigger an action when someone opens an email. Now, it's obviously subject to all of the limitations of, you know, email open and how reliable that is, but I don't have it here, but I do have it, and I can dig it out. I really thought it was on here, but it's not. Yeah. So, and so what you do is you put that little, it's a way of putting it in each email, and then when they open the email, it triggers the like a tag to be created or whatever. So you could, you could do it a couple different ways. Like you could just.
So Kim, I understand like tagging it open. I've used an HTML snippet before, but how do you know which tag was applied most recently before the purchase? Is that what you're about to say?
Yeah. So what I'm thinking is that every time one of those tags gets applied, you would write like you could either write the, oh, I wonder, like tags on the fly too is possible. Well, you could either write that, you could write the name to a field. You could
Oh, I see what you're saying. So you're saying when this tag's applied, so update a field value to a given thing, and then when a purchase happens, look at what the field value was at that time.
Correct. Correct.
Yeah, that makes sense. Cool.
Yeah. But then, and then you'd have to say, well, again, I think you'd have to write that out to another central location and do a calculation. Like, so every time a purchase was made, you'd have to say, oh, and you could do this with our plugins. You'd have to say, oh, well, that one, they opened email number 3 last, and so I'm going to, go to the field somewhere, wherever we're stashing that, called email number 3, and I'm going to add that, I'm going to update or increment that purchase amount into email number 3, field, or whatever you needed to be able to make the calculation, and then, just like you did before, you could show it on the dashboard because it's in a, a record somewhere. This, in a performance record, a performance contact, if whatever you want to call those contacts. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So you have a contact for email 3, one for email 4, one for email 5, and then every time, a purchase is made and email 3 is in that field, then you go out to email 3 and you add to whatever numbers you need in order to create that calculation.
Yeah, makes perfect sense.
That's what I'm saying. It's kind of kludgy.
Cool. Yeah, it's clunky, but it makes sense.
The other thing you could just do is you could just do like, well, never mind. Yeah, I so far that's like the best I can come up with on that one. But yeah, it definitely would work. World's simplest calculation, obviously, compared to what you were just suggesting, Christy, but it's just to give you an idea. And so the idea was to just say, well, like, what if we wanted to create a cumulative number at the company level? Let's say we were more B to B rather than B to C, and so we had different contacts who were all worked for the same company. They were connected to the same company. Like I've got here, Drita Dog. So we'll do Drita and Nessa Dog, who both work for Gemini Farm. And so what I want to do is every time one of these guys makes a purchase, I want to write that to the company record for Gemini Farm, and then calculate what the, keep track of the total purchases, number of purchases, and then calculate the average purchase amount at the aggregate company level, right? So that would be the idea here. This is just moving abysmally slow. So while that's loading, I'll go ahead and go over here. So I wanted to show you a couple of different ways to do this, just so that you could see some of the functionality that was available to you, and hopefully it's not still broken. So this is one way, and I'm going to clean, like I said, I'm going to clean some of this up as we go, and take some of this advanced stuff out that we broke. So you guys just ignore that. And ignore that, oops, and ignore that, we don't need that, and good to go, hopefully. Okay, so what I'm doing here is I'm using our field math plugin. Okay, and you can see the parameters that we have here. So always contact ID first of all. Now, Field Math will take up to 52 of these formula letters. So it'll take all 26 lowercase A through Z and 26 uppercase A through Z. And these can be constants. They can be merge fields, they can be our advanced merge field notation, they can be any of those things. In this case, I am actually, it doesn't look like it, but he messed up my thing. These are our advanced merge field notation. So what we're saying here is we're saying, all right, the value of A, we want to go get, in this case, the total on the latest invoice. And you might remember from previous webinars that we did that when we don't specify otherwise, Pocket Developer always defaults to newest or latest. So since we're not saying anything to the contrary, it's just going to go get the most recent invoice, and then it's going to assign that to A. And then it's also going to go to the company record and find total purchases. Now, back here to DrittaDog, if I go to Dritta's company record for Gemini Farm, you can see that I have set up some custom fields here and that they do have values in them. So over here in the test fields, here we go. Okay, so we have 83, there we go. So we have total purchases, number of purchases, average purchase. And I am just going to make this, I don't know why that's like that. Anyway, we'll just leave it like that. All right, so 83 and 2 and 0 is what it says now. So we can just go see this work. All right, and so then I've got a formula. So what I'm saying here is, all right, I'm going to get the latest invoice total, and I'm going to add it to that total purchases column, and then A plus B, and then this is where I'm saving the result of the formula 2. Now you'll see later this could be a lot of different things in here. You know, it could be, you know, A plus B divided by C, you know, plus 86 if you want. But in our case, we're just doing a simple A plus B here. Now the reason we, even though it's math, even though it's add, subtract, multiply, divide, the reason we have to use field math rather than basic math is because we're doing advanced notation. We're using company and invoice, not just contact. If we were just doing the contact record and add, multiply, subtract, divide, then we could just use the basic math. But this is field math. So all right, so we say that's what we're going to do there. Back to sequence. And then here we're going to do the same similar thing, but I got to clean this up again for number of purchases. So we're going to take out that prefetch. We don't want that. And we're going to now one of the things that I've done here is I've done a simple counter. And so you can see here I don't have an A plus B or C. All I have is A, which is the number of which is going to be the number of purchases. So it's going to go get the value that's already in that field. It's going to add the number 1 to it, and it's going to write it back to that same field. So effectively, A plus 1 creates a counter. Now, again, the reason we have in our store, we have basic math, which will do that same thing. And we also have its own counter plugin, and which will do that too. So here's counter and here's basic math. But again, the difference, and just in case you're wondering, like if like you know you're on a customer ever asks you, well, you know, won't other plugins do this? The reason we created these basic plugins is like with your core plugins, you can basically write PHP without knowing PHP. Literally, I mean, we didn't call it Pocket Developer for nothing. But we know that even this little bit of notation for some customers is just going to blow their hair back, right? And so for those people, we said, look, okay, if you don't have a consultant and you're not technically oriented and all you want to do is this one simple thing, you want to put number of purchases in a field, you know, or you want to prepend purchase notes, or, you know, put the last purchase date in a field. Even though you can do all of these things and more with a core plugin, we're just going to make these simple little tools for you because they're, you know, they're very simple. But absolutely anything that's in this basic group, with the exception of multiple file uploads, can be done with one of the core plugins and more. Okay, so again, the distinction is the advanced merge field notation. Okay, so this one is going to just make a little counter here in the company record. All right. And then what we're going to do is we are going to, come on. All right. I'm going to remove that tag the tag that I used to fire the sequence. Now, normally this would be, you know, I would use a purchase here, but for demo purposes, I'm using a tag. Drita and Nessa both have purchases in there, so I don't have to worry about that part. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a custom delay timer. Now, this is, again, another perfect use case for custom delay timer. And the reason I do this, I'm pausing for 10 seconds. I've created a unique call name that can only be called from this one call. I've put a 10-second delay on it, and there's the URL. And the reason is, you know, even though they say that these posts fire sequentially, they kind of do, but they happen like so fast and sometimes so slow that either they really are firing all at the same time effectively, and if one depends on another, it may or may not be done at the right time when the next one comes along, and or one may just hang, you know. And I think is it Joey Novak has done the statistics on it, and he finds that something like 1 out of 1,500 HTTP posts in Infusionsoft hang and don't complete normally. And so he has written his own SDK that has retries in it, and we did the same thing. So just because it fires at the same time doesn't mean it's going to complete at the same time. So you always need to be just cognizant of when you have dependencies, like I'm about to calculate the average from these two numbers. Well, this one is not, these two are not dependent on one another. These two don't have anything to do with one another, but the next one, the average, has to do with both. So I'm just going to stick a little 10-second delay in there to allow both of those time to complete, just in case. And then I'm going to make this call to this API goal, which is then going to resume the campaign. And then over here, okay. Over here we have our average purchase, okay? And so if we look at this, it's exactly what you would expect it to be. So we're going to take the prefetch out and get rid of all this stuff. Okay, so what we're doing now is we're saying A is the company record total purchases, B is the company record number of purchases. We're going to divide A by B, and then we're going to write that to the custom company field called average purchase. Okay, so we'll give this a try and see what happens. I should probably read Carlos's message before I do this, but we're just going to go publish. Okay, come on. Zoom in a bit. Sorry about that. You're all the way. You guys are the GoToMeeting panels, like way over on my far right. So I don't always catch your, I should move this over so I can see you guys in my line of vision. There we go. Okay, so we're gonna go over here and we're gonna go to, oops, contacts, go back to Drida. Did I just hit the wrong one? I did, didn't I? Darn it. Nope, stop, stop, stop. Not that one. Mm-hmm. Okay. So I think actually, rather than applying a tag, I could probably just repost. Nah, I'm gonna apply the tag. Just see what happens. Tags. So this is test field math. This is the tag that's going to fire this guy. I'm gonna apply it, fingers crossed. And then I'm going to refresh. I feel like I should have some Jeopardy music playing in the background. Okay. So let's do this. Let's just open this in a separate window while we're got it. And there we go. Open link a new tab. I'm going to look at the campaigns just real quick, make sure nothing errored. So you can see Drida has an order for $20. So that should be the invoice that that it's going to add here. Okay, so it paused. Everything looks like it ran. Okay, so let's see what the company says. So go to Gemini Farm. See test fields. And it did, in fact, update it. So you can see that it went to, from, remember, it was 83. So it added it, was that right? 80. It added $20, is that what was on there? Must have been. And then it incremented the number of purchases divided by 4. Remember that was 0 previously, and so now it's got an average of 26. So that should be right. So in this way, what we're doing, you know, is now, and you can imagine this same sort of a scenario with, for example, referral partners, or, you know, which is kind of going to exactly to your point, Christy, you know, where we want to aggregate things, you know, how many at the affiliate level, you know, how every time one of my affiliates buys, I may want to put, you know, reporting numbers on the referrer, both so that I can send them an email with it using email anywhere periodically to let them know, you know, where they stand. I can use field math to calculate their commissions if I want to, put it on there every time, recalculate it, send that out. You know, anywhere, I mean, again, field math is useful for all kinds of things, but field math with advanced notation is particularly interesting when you start to use it on is a way to aggregate too. So that's kind of just a different use. Counters, yep, that's obvious. You know, incrementing things, that's obvious. Now, putting it on one single record, that's a different deal. Now, let me show you guys something else. So I did it this way. Now this is the one that I think I might have, okay, see, Chris, did it this other way just to show you that there is actually another way than what I did. This is the one that I actually may have broken, so we'll see if it works or not. So what we're doing here is, it looks exactly the same, but I've made 2 changes in these records. So what I've done here is, again, I have to get rid of prefetch, go away. And okay, so you can see, instead of doing an A plus B to add the latest invoice to total purchases, in this case what I'm doing is I'm using a different notation, and I always say this, I know, I'm kind of dipping our toe into the advanced notation every time I show you little bits of it, just to kind of familiarize you with it and its capabilities. And then, when we kind of get through the basics of the various things we can do, then we'll turn around and we'll go back and we'll start to do some of the big hairy stuff that you can do with advanced notation and prefetch and all these other things that we have. But I just kind of want to throw this in because it really makes the examples more interesting, one, and more, otherwise if all I was doing was adding A plus B, you'd be like, well, yeah, duh, I mean, plus this can do that. Yeah, but plus this can't add invoices, so part of what makes our functionality unique is really this advanced notation. And so if I don't use it at all, then it's really you aren't gonna really appreciate it all, its power. So anyway, so in this case, what we're doing is, rather than adding A plus B, our formula is just A, right? And A is what it's doing here, because we don't have any filters or anything. We're not saying, we could, but we're not here saying like only paid invoices or only invoices that contain certain products, or we're not filtering in any way. Right here, all we're doing is just saying sum. And when we say sum, it's going to say, okay, take the invoice total on every single invoice for this contact ID, add it all together, assign it to the value A, and then write A to the total purchases field. Okay. So that's, now the thing is, it's because we're not incrementing a purchase, we're not adding A to what's already there. Every time this runs, it's just going to recalculate it every single time. It's just going to take the sum, right? Versus, and then, so there's actually not much point in running it unless I put in another purchase, because it's going to be just the same. Now, in this case, it's going to do the same thing, right? So this is, and this is to me, this is a better notation for that reason. If something goes awry in your campaign, where a tag gets applied or something runs one of those posts, without actually a purchase having happened, it's just going to keep incrementing it by the amount of the last purchase, and it's going to be wrong. And that's kind of the way other people implement this. But by being able to do sum and count, right, now I can say it doesn't matter how many times I post this. If no new invoices have come in, the count is going to remain unchanged. But as soon as it changes, then, let's say a bunch of, for example, let's say a bunch of subscriptions are processed, monthly subscriptions or weekly subscriptions, whatever they may be, then boom, all of a sudden this count will change. So this is the same thing, invoice. I'm counting ID. I could count anything, because really which field it is does not matter. I'm just counting the ID field. I'm saying how many invoices are there? Put that number in A, and then write that to company number of purchases. And I may not have done this on the other one. Oops. So I got to put my little tildes here. Remember that your save to, never, the result that you're writing back to, and when you're writing back to Infusionsoft, that never has tildes. So this is just going to take account, and it's going to do the same thing, and this is part of our notation. Now we also have some other notations as well. We can do min, we can do max. So if you wanted to find like the largest purchase, for example, you do invoice total or order total max, things like that. So same sort of idea. And then right? We do the same thing. We remove the tag, we delay 10 seconds, and we, boom, I just came right back up to this average, the same average we had before, and run it. So we get the same result, but we get to it with a notation that is less prone to problems. So so that is that. Now, I'm going to show you one other thing because it's kind of cool. But before I do that, are there any questions on what I've gone through so far? And you can either type them in the questions or feel free to unmute yourself and ask questions, whatever you like.
How do you report on different record types? So you do these calculations, but then at the end of the day, you want to list these the output, and it contains 2 record types.
So what are your record types?
Okay, in that case, it was contact, and within the campaign, you know, when you have the campaign steps, you know, like what's happened in the campaign.
Mm-hmm.
We wanted to see the record and the campaign steps that have been executed.
And I missed earlier. Were you wanting to, like, write a record? Like, where were you wanting? What were you wanting to do with this? Were you wanting to export it? Were you just wanting to show it on the dashboard? What were you doing?
Export, because we wanted to have, rather than go through every record one by one to look at the data, we wanted to export it to Excel so that we can quickly look at it.
But it's okay to have that by contact.
Yeah, that.
Okay. So you want to know who's the contact and what step in the campaign has been executed.
Correct.
Okay. So, and if I was doing that, what I would do is I would use AnyText for that. So, which is not, which I actually was thinking about doing today, but I didn't. So, let me do this. Let me get out of this. I might auto. Okay, good. So I might auto have just done that a different way. All right, so let's go over here to AnyText. AnyText. So what I would have this, you know, this is going to have to be in steps, obviously, right? So like, give me an example of what you know, the pieces of a sequence might be. Ozzy, like, does it matter? Like, so what would be the steps that you want to record?
Okay. What we had was we were debugging a campaign, and we wanted to see which sequences they had gone through.
Do you want to keep each sequence, or do you want to overwrite them and just say this is the last one it's been through?
No, we want to see the history of the sequences that they've gone through. We don't.
Mm-hmm.
We just want to see it so that we could debug some logic problems quickly, rather than go into each record and have a look at the history manually.
And could export these person notes, then that's ideal, because that's one of their, to me, that's one of their best uses. We even have a plugin for that called Prepend to Person Notes. So if I say, let me just try it one more time. So if I say, like I see a plugin, because you can write to those notes using the API. So why wouldn't you be able to export them? Anniversary, I bet these are them. I bet these are them right here. So let's just assume that those are for a second, because they don't have appointments and other things. So I'm going to just believe that that's the the contact notes right there that we can export. So in which case, if that's true, then we're cooking with gas, because what you could then, yeah, thank you, Monica. That's exactly what that's what I think too. So yeah, I'm pretty sure that that's the notes. Monica just confirmed that. So what you would do now, Aziz, you would just, for example, the easiest way would be this plugin. Where'd it go? Here, prepend. Where is that, dude? Prepend person notes. This one, which you just happen to own, right? And it's just, and then, so what you're going to do is, as you go through your campaign, you can just do this. You could put a date in there if you wanted, and time, but actually I think it has a date and time stamp anyway. So what you would do, come on, get out, back, is, let's imagine this was a sequence, right? Every time you got, I don't even know what the URL is for that thing, but at the end of each one of these, or the beginning, it doesn't matter, you just would need to be consistent, right? Whatever that URL was for prepend to purchase to notes. Let me get the let me just get the quick start guide for it. Hang on. Go to Learning Center, PDF documentation, and PPP. Oh, it's not in there. Oh, heck. Okay. We haven't done that one yet. All right. Well, let's just imagine that it is whatever. So it is the APIguys.com/scripts, blocks /prepend. This is probably like wrong, but prepend to notes, and then /prepend.php, and then I have no idea what these are, but I'm guessing it's something like save to, right? Because it all is going to notes, so you're not specifying a note field. And so then what you would do is right here, what's the name of this? What's the name of this step in the campaign? Number one. Check email address. I have no idea what it is, but so you could just type that text right in here, okay? And when this runs, just like that, and then do one of these at each part of the, at the end of each one of these sequences in your campaign, one after another. And then as it ran through, it would just write that to those person notes. And then you'd have it, because you could export only the person notes. So unless you're using person notes for something else, in which case we haven't done this yet. We have on the near future roadmap to do a find and replace, which would go, in which case I would, in my note, I would put something that I could find and replace, like this, so that later I could go grab it and pull it out of the middle of those notes and turn it to blank, and then I wouldn't ruin all my notes. You could put something like a tag here that said start or troubleshooting note, and then something like end troubleshooting note. Or no, I just did this, something like this. Anyway, so that you could find these pieces and then later get rid of them without having to export and re-import. You could, using find and replace, something like that.
Shouldn't that really be the way should all write our campaigns to have sort of like a debug HTTP post. We're doing that all the time, you know, saying, oh, what's happened, you know, like, what's happened? You know, finding that if we don't get our logic right in the campaign, sometimes the problem we have is that there was the same record in the campaign twice. That's what happened.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that Carlos and I started doing for another client that had like really outrageously complicated process was we would write to those notes. We would say we call them breadcrumbs, and we would say, you know, date, time. Before we changed this field, it said, you know, and we'd say this and this, and you know, and it was changed by this process to be this and this, so that number one, we could say, well, you know, why did it change? Number two, if it was wrong, we still had the data to change it back. You know, it was exactly like you say. It's our way of like tracing, you know, back tracing our steps to figure out what happened. And then later, if someone calls you and says, hey, this, you know, this thing is not working, we can just look at that very quickly and go, oh my gosh, now that's blank, or, you know, and it wasn't, or, you know, whatever. I mean, having those kinds of notes and breadcrumbs are immensely helpful for any sort of complex campaign at all. And quite honestly, that's about the only thing that's our main use for that note field. For us, I mean, you know, other people and other clients will dictate other uses for it, but most of the time we find that's unused, and it's a great way to put in reverse chronological order, you know, things like that. Just keep track of them. Breadcrumbs, that's what we call them.
Thank you. Hey, Chet, did you like that one? Record goes through 10 sequences within a campaign. It's going to write each sequence that it's gone through. Is that right?
Well, yeah, and that's what I'm saying. You would have to set it up that way. So in my case here, you know, we don't. This is a bad example because we don't have a big long chain of sequences. But if you go back, you know, and I'll just give you a much better example here, and what would be a classic kind of use case for what you're talking about. So go back to the list. Come on. So if I go to my Kim demo here, and you look at our dynamic webinar campaign, which is this big, huge, long thing. So what you would do, you know, what it would require is as a best practice, you know, and something that you guys enforce in your campaigns, particularly when they're new, but I don't see any reason to take them out, would be that in every single one of these sequence boxes, you put that note in at the end. So as they run through, they're going to create in reverse chronological order, almost a diary of, you know, what it's done. Oops, like this. So here, I'll leave this kind of big. So at the end of this box, right, you'd put a post that sends to notes, you know, something to notes right here that says announcement emails sent, and it would, you know, the prepend to person notes by definition prepends, so it puts it at the top, and I'm pretty sure it puts a date and time stamp. Okay, so you could also merge in there very easily the contact ID, right? So so that when you, and even the contact name, so that when you exported it, you know, it was obvious, but you could export contact ID, contact name, and then this note field, right? And so you'd see, it would say, at this time, it completed the announcement emails. Now, let's just imagine this was a long 6-month nurture sequence all in here. Well, then you might want to put those same little breadcrumbs in between each one of those emails to say, email 1's been sent, email 2's been sent, email 3's been sent, you know, email 4, announcement emails complete. And then you get over here to register and go to webinar, and you put another little post, right? Oops, in here at the end that says, you know, on this date and time, register and go to webinar, you know, registration, go to webinar registration was complete, you know, and then you'll just do the same in every box. And that's what we mean by breadcrumbs, right? Is because it gives you a trail as you go through of what happened and when. And if you want to, because again, we have advanced merge field notation, you can run it twice. You can say, the first time you post it, you say, this is what was in that field, right? So you write the contents of that field to the note, and then you run it one more time. Then you change the note, you know, or change the field, and then you run it one more time, and you say, and this is what we changed it to, you know, when you're actually making changes to the database. Or we added contact, you know, we added this contact, or whatever it is that you're doing, you know, this order was placed in it. So you really literally what you're doing is, as you create your campaigns, you also are creating these breadcrumbs or this diary that as they go through, it makes a note of exactly what's happened. That was kind of the idea I was getting at.
Okay, so just to confirm, it's like the before and after shot of what you've done.
If you need that, like I said, we only do that when we are changing fields that are where the data is mission critical, so that if we lost that data and it was wrong, something went badly wrong, and we overwrote data that was supposed to, you know, we have to have a way to be able to change it back, you know, but we also do it for troubleshooting purposes. Like, you know, we may put a note in there that said, you know, this checkbox on this form was not checked, therefore we, you know, sent it through this decision diamond, you know, or whatever we needed in order to like troubleshoot those campaigns. That's what we put in it. And the point is that those posts to that field are so completely flexible that you can put anything in there you want. Your breadcrumbs will be different from my breadcrumbs, and they'll be different for each campaign, because you know, you're trying to keep track of different things for troubleshooting.
Brilliant.
Does that help?
Perfect, Kim. Just
okay.
It's going to save us days in the future. Thank you.
Okay, good. Let's do one more thing, and then we'll call it a night here. We've got about 15 minutes, and okie dokie, let's see. Let me go back to, oh, I was in Pocket Developers where I was trying to go with that. Field math. Oh, no, I wasn't. Sorry. Let me try something. Let me go. Heck, stop. It was in the campaign I was just in. So there's this thing that we created called override, and we use it. Look at that. We use it most often in field math, I guess, for like counters and incrementing dollar amounts and things like that. And this is what allows you to put something in a record other than the contact going through the campaign. So I'll show you that. And I'm gonna like force it in rather, but I can also merge it in. Come on. Okay. So if I go, let's go here. It's this one. So I may or may not be able to run this. I should probably put this in its own. Okay. So here's the deal. So this is, again, this is field math. Let me make this bigger so you guys can see. So we have field math here. Now, we have contact ID, okay, which is what we always have. And then we have this notation here, which is override arena handicap. This is one of our custom fields. It's a polo term, right? And then we have override dot arena handicap save to. So what we're doing is we're saying A is your arena handicap. When this runs, we're going to decrement it by 1. And then we are going to write that to override arena, write it back to. So basically, instead of counting up, we're counting down, okay? And then we've added this other field here called override, which is where this is going, right? Now the cool thing about this is, right here I've said 18055 is my override. So what I'm doing is I'm forcing a contact ID in here. So as, let's just take, you know, Dritadog, okay? So as Drita is running through this campaign, every time this post snippet fires, it is going to go to contact 18055 and decrement their handicap by 1 every time. So even though it's Drita running through the campaign, we are affecting the override ID instead. Now in this case, we are forcing that notation in, but or forcing that in as a constant, but in fact we can do something like this. So we have, and by the way, Ramona is on this call, I know, and actually it was Ramona that came up with this use case, and she needed to do this for her client. We actually built this out for her, and then of course we kept it. So if we go here to where am I? Contact fields additional. There should be referrer ID on here. I know it's in a referral code. No. Oh wait, I'm in the wrong place. It's down here. Referral partner fields. Referral. Let's see. Referral partner fields, referral partners fields. I don't know how those are different, but anyway, we're going to put ID in here. So this is referring affiliate contact.id. So now what we're doing, and we could do this with other things too. We can also, we have other like ways, more advanced ways to get to these things like prefetch and stuff, which I'll show you another time. But like this case, we're just taking an ID of someone who is in some way linked to this contact here as their referrer. You could do the same with owner and saying every time this contact does something, do something to the record of the affiliate or referrer. Does that make sense? And that's called override. It's the ability to get, write, update, delete from a contact record other than the one going through the campaign, and it is most commonly used with field math because we're most commonly keeping track of something for reporting purposes, and that's why it's usually field math. Does that make sense? And does anyone have any questions on that? Or on anything, actually?
Yeah, Kim, I've got a question on that. You know how you got the contact ID hard-coded? Is there a way, like I'm thinking of, you know how we now work with a campaign where linking company contacts? Mm-hmm. So can not hard-coded, that it just defaults to the company record that it's linked to?
Well, if I'm understanding your question, we aren't hard-coding it in yours. We are...
Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
I mean, yeah, so you're talking about the contractor or the plan?
No, okay. I'll rephrase the question, sorry. example that you gave, right? You are hard coding a contact ID at the end.
Yes.
So you're pointing to something specific. Is there a way to make that a bit more variable?
This one that I have up right here is variable.
Oh, okay.
I'm not sure if you're seeing this. So I had one hard-coded, but I changed it. It's got the merge field referring affiliate contact.id. Can you see this?
Oh, yeah. Okay, got it. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is finding the referrer of whoever is running through the campaign at that time.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yep. And in this case, the reason we're decrementing is in Ramona's case, so her customer was selling a product in quantities of 10, and well, actually I should rephrase. Yeah, and then her affiliates were reselling it, you know, and when they sold their 10th one, we got to 0, and then we, you know, she did some things to get them to refill their supply of the product. So that's why we were counting down in this case, you know, rather than up. But that, yeah, that's the idea. So it doesn't matter who's going through the campaign. You know, if you don't have it on a decision diamond or any sort of a filter, everybody's going to do that, but it's going to be to their referrer if there is one. So.
All right. So are you using this override facility to, you know how we're talking about trapping performance of the contractor to see how responsive they are? Are you using this override facility to count up or down to trap the performance statistics for the contractors?
I have no idea. Monica, are we? See if Monica's listening.
Sorry, I have a lot of background noise, so I'm muted. I guess I'm not certain yet. We're either going to do that or we're just going to throw them into a separate campaign. I haven't tested those to see which works better, but you know, it might be that what we do is we just send the contractor into a campaign that will do an increment to measure the performance statistics. Does that make sense?
Sure. Yep. Okay.
All right. Okay. That's all I had. Anyone else have any other questions? So one of the things I want you to sort of start to think about is you'll notice that as these plugins evolved, they started to evolve around the idea of data types to some extent. So, you know, the first one we did were dates. The second one we did was emails, so that one, I guess you could call that a data type in a way. And now when you talk about field math, you're really, for the most part, talking about numbers, right? And then next time we'll do any text, you know. So you start to get to where you realize, like, okay, well, what are we talking about here? What kind of data? Primarily because you mix and match them, and you can pass from things from one to another, but you know. Primarily, what is the data that I need to work with here? What is its? What format is it? Is it a tag? Is it a company? Is it an opportunity ID? You know, stage? Is it text? Is it a date? Is it a number? And then based on that, that points you at the right plugin. That's probably going to be the one that you need for the most part. And then you start playing and building from there. Okay, so how would I do that with this plugin? You know, so just to give you sort of a bigger picture framework, because that's the other thing that sort of baffles people is like, well, which one do I need? So if you're talking about core plugins, think about data type, look for the corresponding data type-ish, and start there. Make sense?
Yep.
Okay. Well, super cool, guys. That's it for today, and we'll get back on again next week and do it again.